The Time Masters, controlling past, present, and future through temporal consciousness. Let me tell you about the moment that transformed Dr. Nathan Rodriguez from a brilliant cognitive neuroscientist studying time perception to what temporal psychologists now call a time master, someone who has achieved conscious control over the flow of time itself, manipulating past experiences to heal trauma, accelerating present moments for enhanced performance, and accessing future knowledge to guide optimal decision-making through systematic development of temporal consciousness that transcends ordinary human limitations. It was November 12, 2025, and Nathan was experiencing what should have been impossible according to conventional understanding of time, consciously slowing the progression of a critical moment to analyze and modify its outcome in real time. Most people experience time as an unstoppable linear progression that controls their lives, forcing them to live as victims of temporal flow, with no conscious influence over pace, direction, or accessibility of past and future experiences. Nathan discovered something that revolutionized human relationship with temporality itself. He learned what Napoleon Hill called the Temporal Mastery Method, the systematic approach to developing consciousness that can interface directly with time as a controllable dimension, enabling conscious manipulation of temporal flow, healing modification of past experiences, and strategic access to future knowledge for present optimization. Within 48 months, Nathan had not only mastered conscious control over his personal experience of time, but had developed what colleagues called supernatural temporal abilities, healing decades-old trauma through past experience modification, performing complex tasks in seemingly impossible timeframes through temporal acceleration, and making consistently optimal decisions through future knowledge integration that appeared to operate beyond normal causation. Tonight, you're going to learn the exact time mastery framework Nathan used to achieve conscious control over past, present, and future through temporal consciousness development, and how you can apply these same principles to transcend ordinary time limitations and develop strategic control over temporal flow, regardless of your current understanding of time or consciousness capabilities. The temporal limitation crisis. Nathan's awakening began when his research into time perception revealed that human consciousness possessed far greater temporal capabilities than conventional neuroscience recognized. His studies of individuals with extraordinary timing abilities, accelerated healing, and seemingly prescient decision-making suggested that consciousness could interface with time in ways that current scientific paradigms couldn't explain. I realized that our entire understanding of time was based on external measurement rather than conscious experience, Nathan later reflected. We treat time as something that happens to us, rather than recognizing it as a dimension that consciousness can learn to navigate and influence. My research subjects weren't just perceiving time differently, they were actually controlling their temporal experience. The crisis deepened when Nathan recognized that his own consciousness was constrained by conventional temporal assumptions that limited his access to past wisdom, present optimization, and future guidance that could dramatically enhance his personal and professional effectiveness. That's when his research partner, Dr. Sarah Chen, introduced him to Professor Elena Zhang, a temporal consciousness researcher who had spent 22 years studying what she called chronological awareness development, the systematic cultivation of consciousness capabilities that enable direct interface with time as a controllable dimension. The temporal mastery discovery. Professor Zhang had a revolutionary understanding of consciousness and time that completely transformed Nathan's conception of human temporal potential and temporal reality. Conventional consciousness operates within what we call temporal imprisonment, the belief that time controls awareness rather than awareness controlling time. Professor Zhang explained, time masters understand that consciousness exists beyond linear time constraints and can learn to navigate temporal dimensions as easily as moving through physical space. Professor Zhang showed Nathan documented cases of individuals who had achieved extraordinary temporal control, including healers who could reverse physical damage by modifying past experience templates, performers who could slow time during critical moments to optimize responses, and visionaries who consistently made optimal decisions through conscious access to future probability streams. These aren't mystical abilities, Professor Zhang continued. They represent natural consciousness capabilities that become accessible when you understand time as a navigable dimension rather than an uncontrollable force. When you master temporal consciousness, you transcend the limitations that keep most people trapped in linear time experience. The 5 temporal mastery principles. Over the next 16 months, Professor Zhang taught Nathan 5 fundamental principles that enable conscious control over temporal dimensions. Principle 1. Temporal consciousness expansion. Instead of accepting linear time as unchangeable reality, time masters develop consciousness that can perceive and interface with multiple temporal dimensions, accessing past experiences, present moments, and future possibilities as simultaneously available resources. Principle 2. Past-Experience Modification. Rather than being trapped by historical experiences and their emotional impacts, time masters learn to consciously access and modify past experience templates, healing trauma, and optimizing personal history through temporal consciousness intervention. Principle 3. Present moment optimization. Time masters develop ability to consciously control the subjective flow of present moment experience, slowing time during critical situations for enhanced analysis and response optimization, or accelerating routine activities for maximum efficiency. Principle 4. Future knowledge integration. Instead of making decisions based only on present information, time masters access future probability streams and integrate tomorrow's knowledge into present decision-making for consistently optimal choices and strategic advantage. Principle 5. Temporal Flow Synchronization. Time masters learn to synchronize their consciousness with optimal temporal flows, riding time currents that enhance personal effectiveness while avoiding temporal resistance that creates struggle and limitation. Nathan's 48-month Temporal Mastery Transformation. Under Professor Zhang's guidance, Nathan systematically developed his temporal consciousness capabilities. Month 1. Nate. Temporal Awareness Development and Consciousness Expansion. Nathan began by expanding his consciousness beyond linear time perception, learning to develop awareness of past, present, and future as simultaneously accessible dimensions rather than sequential experiences. He discovered that ordinary consciousness was actually severely constrained by temporal assumptions that could be systematically overcome. Working with Professor Zhang, Nathan learned meditation and awareness techniques specifically designed to expand consciousness beyond linear time limitations. He practiced perceiving multiple temporal streams simultaneously and developed ability to consciously navigate between past memories, present experiences, and future possibilities. I realized that linear time was actually a limitation I was imposing on my consciousness rather than an absolute reality, Nathan explained. Once I learned to expand my awareness beyond temporal assumptions, I could access past experiences as modifiable resources and future possibilities as available guidance. Month 9-16, Past Experience Access and Trauma Healing through Temporal Modification. Nathan learned systematic techniques for consciously accessing and modifying past experiences, beginning with minor emotional adjustments and progressing to comprehensive trauma healing through what Professor Zhang called temporal therapy. He discovered that past experiences existed as modifiable consciousness templates rather than fixed historical facts. He developed ability to identify past experiences that were creating present limitations and learned to consciously modify these temporal templates to heal emotional wounds, release limiting beliefs, and optimize his psychological foundation through direct consciousness intervention in historical experience patterns. Nathan also learned to enhance positive past experiences, amplifying successful memories and achievement patterns to strengthen confidence and capability while reducing the impact of negative experiences through strategic temporal consciousness modification. Month 17-24, Present Moment Control and Temporal Flow Manipulation. Nathan mastered conscious control over subjective time flow during present moment experiences, learning to slow time during high-pressure situations for enhanced analysis and optimal response selection, while accelerating routine activities to maximize efficiency and productivity. He developed what Professor Zhang called temporal gearing, the ability to consciously adjust the subjective pace of experience to match optimal performance requirements for different activities and challenges. Complex problem solving could be conducted in slowed time, while repetitive tasks could be accelerated. Nathan also learned to enter temporal flow states, where his consciousness synchronized perfectly with optimal time currents, enabling extraordinary performance that felt effortless because it operated in harmony with temporal momentum rather than against temporal resistance. Month 25-32, Future Knowledge Access and Decision Optimization. Nathan developed sophisticated techniques for accessing future probability streams and integrating tomorrow's knowledge into present decision-making, enabling consistently optimal choices that appeared impossibly prescient to linear time-thinking individuals. He learned to identify key decision points where future knowledge would provide maximum advantage and developed protocols for accessing specific types of future information, including market developments, relationship outcomes, and personal development opportunities. Nathan also mastered what Professor Zhang called probability navigation, consciously selecting optimal future timelines through present decisions guided by future knowledge integration, creating life trajectories that consistently led to desired outcomes. Month 3340, Advanced Temporal Integration and Consciousness Sovereignty. Nathan achieved what Professor Zhang called temporal sovereignty, complete conscious control over his experience of time, including past experience modification, present flow optimization, and future knowledge integration operating simultaneously for maximum life effectiveness. He developed advanced capabilities including healing others through temporal consciousness modification, teaching temporal mastery principles, and creating optimal outcomes for complex situations through coordinated past healing, present optimization, and future guidance integration. Nathan also learned to maintain temporal mastery while operating in ordinary social contexts, integrating extraordinary consciousness capabilities with normal daily interactions without creating confusion or social resistance. Month 4148, Teaching Integration and Temporal Mastery Multiplication. Nathan mastered facilitating temporal consciousness development in others, helping selected individuals achieve their own temporal mastery while expanding human understanding of consciousness and time through documented research and practical applications. He developed systematic teaching protocols that enabled others to develop temporal consciousness safely and effectively, creating a community of time masters who could support each other's continued development while contributing to expanded human temporal capabilities. Nathan also established temporal mastery applications in healthcare, education, and performance enhancement that demonstrated practical benefits of consciousness-based time control while maintaining appropriate integration with conventional social systems. The extraordinary temporal mastery results. By month 48, Nathan's temporal consciousness development had produced remarkable outcomes. Comprehensive past healing. Achieved complete resolution of all significant trauma and limiting experiences through conscious past modification, creating optimal psychological foundation and enhanced personal effectiveness across all life areas. Present moment optimization. Developed reliable ability to control subjective time flow for maximum performance, including temporal deceleration during high-pressure situations and acceleration during routine activities for enhanced productivity. Future knowledge integration. Established consistent access to future probability streams for optimal decision-making, enabling strategic choices that consistently produce desired outcomes and avoided potential problems. Temporal flow mastery. Achieved harmonious relationship with time that eliminated temporal stress and created effortless life flow through consciousness synchronization with optimal temporal currents. Advanced healing capabilities. Developed ability to facilitate temporal consciousness healing in others, helping individuals resolve trauma and optimize their personal histories through guided past experience modification. Research and teaching success. Established temporal consciousness as legitimate field of study while training dozens of individuals in time mastery principles and applications. The Temporal Mastery Framework. Through Nathan's transformation and Professor Zhang's research with temporal consciousness practitioners, they developed a comprehensive framework for time mastery. Phase 1. Temporal awareness expansion and linear limitation transcendence. Develop consciousness that can perceive beyond linear time constraints and access past, present, and future as simultaneously available dimensions. Practice meditation and awareness. Techniques specifically designed for temporal consciousness expansion. Understand relationship between consciousness assumptions and temporal experience limitations. Establish foundation for conscious temporal navigation and time control development. Phase 2. Past experience access and historical template modification. Learn systematic techniques for consciously accessing and modifying past experiences to heal trauma and optimize psychological foundation. Develop ability to identify past patterns that create present limitations and practice temporal modification protocols. Master past experience enhancement for amplifying positive memories and successful pattern strengthening. Establish trauma healing through direct consciousness intervention in historical experience templates. Phase 3. Present moment control and temporal flow optimization. Master conscious control over subjective time flow during present moment experiences for maximum performance and efficiency. Develop temporal gearing capabilities for adjusting experience pace to match optimal performance requirements. Learn to enter temporal flow states where consciousness synchronizes with optimal time currents. Practice present moment optimization for both high-pressure situations and routine activities. Phase 4, future knowledge integration and decision enhancement, develops sophisticated techniques for accessing future probability streams and integrating tomorrow's knowledge into present decision-making. Learn to identify optimal decision points for future knowledge application and master probability navigation protocols. Practice strategic life trajectory selection through future-guided present choices. Establish consistently optimal decision-making through temporal consciousness integration. Phase 5, complete temporal integration and advanced applications, achieve temporal sovereignty with simultaneous past healing, present optimization, and future guidance integration for maximum life effectiveness. Develop advanced capabilities including facilitating temporal healing in others and teaching temporal mastery principles. Master integration of extraordinary consciousness capabilities with normal social interactions. Establish temporal mastery applications for healthcare, education, and performance enhancement. Real-world temporal mastery applications. Case Study 1. The temporal healing therapist psychologist, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, integrated temporal consciousness techniques into therapeutic practice, enabling clients to achieve rapid trauma resolution through past experience modification and future vision integration. Her temporal therapy approach produced healing outcomes that typically required years of conventional treatment in months or weeks through consciousness-based time intervention. Case Study 2. The temporal performance coach athletic performance specialist Michael Torres developed temporal consciousness training for elite athletes, enabling temporal deceleration during critical performance moments for optimal response selection and temporal acceleration for enhanced training efficiency. His temporal coaching produced performance improvements that exceeded conventional training methods through consciousness-based time optimization. Case Study 3. The temporal business strategist executive consultant Lisa Chen applied temporal consciousness principles to business strategy development using future knowledge integration for optimal strategic planning and past experience optimization for enhanced leadership effectiveness. Her temporal consulting enabled organizations to make consistently optimal decisions through consciousness-based temporal intelligence integration. The neuroscience of temporal consciousness. Modern consciousness research provides frameworks for understanding temporal mastery capabilities. Neuroplasticity and temporal perception modification research demonstrates that consciousness training can modify neural networks responsible for time perception, potentially enabling conscious control over subjective temporal experience and enhanced temporal awareness. Memory reconsolidation and past experience modification neuroscience studies show that memory recall activates reconsolidation processes that enable memory modification, suggesting scientific basis for conscious past experience healing and trauma resolution through temporal consciousness techniques. Predictive processing and future knowledge access brain research reveals sophisticated predictive processing systems that enable future state modeling, potentially explaining enhanced decision-making capabilities achieved through temporal consciousness development and future knowledge integration. Flow states and temporal transcendence studies of flow states demonstrate altered time perception during peak performance, suggesting that consciousness can naturally transcend ordinary temporal limitations under optimal conditions that temporal mastery techniques systematically access. Advanced temporal mastery techniques. Multidimensional temporal navigation and timeline integration master consciousness techniques for navigating multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously while integrating insights from parallel timeline streams for enhanced wisdom and capability development. Collective temporal healing and group past modification develop ability to facilitate temporal consciousness healing for groups and families, enabling collective trauma resolution and shared past experience optimization for enhanced relationship and community wellness. Temporal consciousness teaching and mastery multiplication. Learn systematic approaches for teaching temporal consciousness development while maintaining appropriate integration with conventional social systems and scientific understanding. Advanced future probability access and timeline selection master. Sophisticated techniques for accessing complex future probability networks and consciously selecting optimal timeline trajectories through strategic present moment choice optimization and temporal consciousness guidance. The technology tools for temporal mastery. Brainwave monitoring and temporal state optimization use EEG and neurofeedback devices to monitor consciousness states associated with temporal mastery and optimize practices for enhanced temporal consciousness development and time control capabilities. Virtual reality and temporal experience training leverage VR technology to create controlled temporal experience environments for practicing temporal consciousness techniques and enhancing temporal mastery development through immersive training systems. Biofeedback and consciousness measurement systems implement biofeedback technologies to track consciousness coherence and temporal awareness states while optimizing meditation and temporal consciousness development practices for maximum effectiveness. Meditation apps and temporal consciousness guidance platforms use specialized meditation and consciousness development applications that provide guided training for temporal awareness expansion and time mastery technique development. The daily temporal mastery practice. Successful time masters develop consistent temporal consciousness development routines. Morning temporal consciousness integration, 35 minutes. Practice past experience optimization and future knowledge integration for optimal daily planning and consciousness preparation. Establish temporal flow synchronization and present moment optimization capabilities for enhanced daily effectiveness. Review temporal mastery goals and plan consciousness development activities for continued capability expansion. Midday temporal flow optimization and present control practice, 20 minutes. Practice conscious temporal flow control during daily activities and optimize present moment experience for maximum effectiveness. Apply future knowledge integration to ongoing decisions and adjust temporal consciousness for optimal performance. Maintain temporal awareness and practice temporal mastery techniques during routine activities. Evening temporal integration and advanced development, 25 minutes. Review daily temporal consciousness experiences and integrate insights for continued mastery development. Practice advanced temporal techniques and prepare consciousness for enhanced overnight temporal processing. Plan continued temporal mastery development and assess progress toward complete temporal sovereignty. Common temporal mastery mistakes. Mistake 1. Linear time assumption and temporal limitation acceptance. Continuing to accept linear time as unchangeable reality rather than developing consciousness that can transcend ordinary temporal limitations and access expanded temporal capabilities. Mistake 2. Past fixation and historical limitation maintenance, remaining trapped by past experiences and their emotional impacts rather than learning conscious past modification techniques for trauma healing and psychological optimization. Mistake 3. Future anxiety and tomorrow avoidance, experiencing future as source of anxiety rather than developing future knowledge integration capabilities for enhanced decision-making and strategic advantage through temporal consciousness. Mistake 4. Present moment unconsciousness and temporal flow resistance, operating unconsciously in present moments rather than developing temporal flow optimization and present moment control capabilities for enhanced performance and effectiveness. Mistake 5. Temporal mastery isolation and teaching avoidance, developing temporal consciousness individually rather than sharing capabilities with others and contributing to expanded human understanding of temporal mastery and consciousness potential. Building your temporal mastery system. Weeks 1-8. Temporal awareness foundation and linear limitation recognition. Begin developing awareness of temporal consciousness possibilities and recognize limitations imposed by linear time assumptions. Practice basic meditation and awareness techniques designed for temporal consciousness expansion. Understand relationship between consciousness and time experience while establishing foundation for temporal mastery development. Weeks 9-20. Past experience access and historical template modification. Learn systematic techniques for conscious past experience access and begin practicing basic past modification for emotional healing. Develop ability to identify past patterns creating present limitations and practice temporal healing protocols. Establish trauma resolution and psychological optimization through consciousness-based past experience intervention. Weeks 21-32. Present moment control and temporal flow mastery, master conscious control over subjective time flow, and develop temporal gearing capabilities for performance optimization. Learn to enter temporal flow states and practice present moment optimization for various activities. Establish reliable access to enhanced present moment consciousness and temporal flow synchronization capabilities. Weeks 33-44. Future knowledge integration and decision enhancement. Develop sophisticated techniques for accessing future probability streams and integrating tomorrow's knowledge into present decisions. Practice optimal decision-making through future knowledge integration and master probability navigation for strategic life trajectory selection. Establish consistently enhanced decision-making through temporal consciousness guidance and future wisdom access. Weeks 45-52. Advanced integration and teaching development. Achieve comprehensive temporal mastery with simultaneous past healing, present optimization, and future guidance integration for maximum effectiveness. Develop advanced capabilities, including facilitating temporal healing in others and teaching temporal consciousness principles. Establish temporal mastery as ongoing life capability while contributing to expanded human understanding of consciousness and time mastery potential. Your temporal consciousness revolution. Dr. Nathan Rodriguez's transformation from conventional neuroscientist to time master wasn't about rejecting scientific understanding of time. It was about expanding scientific awareness to include consciousness as a fundamental force capable of interfacing directly with temporal dimensions that conventional physics considers immutable. The temporal mastery method he learned isn't about escaping time limitations. It's about recognizing that consciousness naturally exists beyond linear time constraints and can learn to navigate temporal dimensions as easily as moving through physical space. Temporal mastery represents the ultimate consciousness development achievement. When you achieve conscious control over past, present, and future through temporal consciousness expansion, you transcend the limitations that keep most people trapped in linear time experience and access capabilities that appear supernatural because they operate beyond conventional temporal understanding. Your ability to heal trauma, optimize performance, and make consistently optimal decisions ultimately depends on your temporal consciousness development rather than conventional psychological or strategic approaches alone. Those who master temporal consciousness will always outperform those limited to linear time experience and sequential decision-making. The framework exists, the techniques are documented, the capabilities are accessible through systematic consciousness development. The only variable is your willingness to expand beyond linear temporal assumptions and embrace temporal consciousness possibilities that most people never imagined possible. Like this video if you're ready to master temporal consciousness and develop control over past, present, and future through systematic temporal mastery. Subscribe to this channel for continued temporal consciousness and time mastery education. Comment below with your biggest temporal limitation. Let's explore consciousness solutions together. Remember, you aren't trapped by time. Time is a dimension your consciousness can learn to navigate and control through systematic temporal awareness development. Start your temporal mastery journey today.